This is the International Soccer Preview, and we are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 17. We're looking at the squads of the 2023 Gold Cup. This is the short version for El Salvador's players. Here we go. It's June, so welcome to part 2 of the media cast, and now we have the preliminary roster and final roster. That was a 49-man preliminary roster for El Salvador. Didn't use up the whole 60 spots that they could have. And so welcome to people coming from part 1 and people coming in for the short video at this point. I'll just kind of put a context on what we've been doing. And we created a list of players, a list of possible candidates based mostly on recent participation. And we put them into position. So we organized them by position. And then we ranked them according to how likely they are to make the squad. So all of our reasons for ranking them where we did are in part 1. And if you want to go back and see, hey, why is that player ranked as a possible but unlikely when I think that should be a definite player, we'll tell you why in part 1. But in part 2, we're just going to go through that list again and tell you who made it to the preliminary and final squad. So here we go. We have manager Hugo Perez. That's who we start with, and he was not fired in the month between the first part and now, unlike Mexico's manager. So we will consider him, a successful candidate for reaching the Gold Cup. Now, goalkeepers, we had definite candidate Mario Gonzalez, and he did make the squad. And likely candidate Thomas Romero also made the squad. We had a possible candidate in Kevin Carabantes. He did not even make the preliminary squad there, but our possible but unlikely character, Oscar Pleites, was selected for the squad. So those are our 3 goalkeepers. And let's take a look at defenders. For central defenders, we considered Roberto Dominguez a definite candidate to make the squad, and we were right. He did make the squad, the final squad. And the 2 likely candidates, Ronald Rodriguez and Eric Zavaleta, both of them also making the Gold Cup. We had 3 possible candidates as well, and only one of them made it, and that was Eric Zavaleta. He made it to the Gold Cup, but the other 2, Romulo Villalobos and Rudy Clavel, only made the preliminary squad but didn't make the final cut there. The same is actually true of our first player, who we reckoned was seemingly off the squad, but he's not completely off the squad because Julio Cibrian made the preliminary squad. However, Lisandro Claros, we were right in thinking him off the team because he didn't make the preliminary squad there. Moving on to left backs, probably the biggest news is Alexander Larin, not selected even for the preliminary squad. So I looked to see if there was an injury or some reason, and I couldn't find anything. So we had him as a likely candidate, but he was not selected for the squad. We had him as a likely candidate, just to give an example for people coming into the short version. The reason we had him as likely was he started 8 of their 14 games since the start of 2022, was on the bench for 1 and not selected for 5 others, including their last 3 matches. So whatever happened there, not selected for the even the preliminary squad, surprisingly, Alexander Larin. The next one down, though, is the possible candidate Nelson Blanco, and he did make the squad. And then we had 4 possible but unlikely candidates. Only one of them made it to the preliminary squad, and that was Aidan Clamaco. However, the other three, Alexis Renderos and Eduardo Vigil and Walter Pineda, none of them made it even to the preliminary squad. And nor did Miguel Limas, who we coded as seemingly off the squad. There. Okay, over to right backs, and no surprise that our definite candidate, Brian Tamakis, is selected, and so is our likely candidate, Alex Roldan. And there's a third player coded as a right back who made it, William Canales. And we had also a possible but unlikely candidate in Jaime Ortiz. I really got to talk to someone about how to pronounce that name. Ortiz made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. Okay, and then we had one general defender, just kind of listed as a defender rather than a more specific listing, Kevin Menjivar. We considered him possible but unlikely, and he was not selected even for the 49-player preliminary squad. All right, the next surprise is coming up. That is versatile midfielder Darwin Seren, who we considered a likely candidate, not selected even for the preliminary squad. So even I checked the internet, you know, he was the captain for the 2021 Gold Cup and 90 caps. So I thought there must be a reason, but I didn't find one on the internets. So Darwin Seren, a surprise non-entry here. Defensive midfielders, we had likely candidate Christian Martinez making the Gold Cup there. He was selected, and so was possible but unlikely candidate Melvin Cartagena. So we didn't expect that, but there we go. The other possible but unlikely candidate was Jeremy Garay, and he did not make even the preliminary squad. However, the player that we thought was seemingly off the squad, because he last appeared in April 2022, Isaac Portillo, was selected for the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. In the central midfield position, we had two definite candidates, Narciso Orellana and Brian Landaverde, and both of them are selected for the Gold Cup. And now we jump down to possible but unlikely candidates, Derek Calvillo and Robinson Aguirre, and both of them made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. Finally, Marvin Monterosa seems to be off the squad for us, and it looks like this is proof that he is, because he wasn't selected for the preliminary squad even. Left midfielder Jairo Enriquez was a definite candidate for us, and he is selected for the Gold Cup, so yay for us. And seemingly off the squad, Dennis Pineda does seem to be off the squad because he was not selected for the preliminary squad. So good shooting there for us, good predicting. And we move on to right midfielders. We had a possible candidate in Leonardo Menjivar, but Leonardo Menjivar, no but about it. He made the final squad. However, possible but unlikely candidate Kevin Santamaria was not even on the preliminary squad. Okay, we're moving upfield to left wing, and we have Kevin Reyes as a likely candidate, and he is selected for the squad. We had, I have him on my list as possible but unlikely. So it looks like in part one we moved him up to possible, but he did make the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. That's Armando Moreno. Okay, right wingers, we had a possible candidate with Joshua Perez, and he was kind of the only one there. so he is selected for the squad. There were two players who seemed to be off the squad, Walmer Martinez and Roberto Molina, and they are not selected even for the preliminary squad. Okay, moving on to forwards, we begin with attacking midfielders and two likely candidates, Enrico Hernandez and Meyer Gill. Enrico Hernandez surprisingly only made the preliminary squad, even though we considered him likely. Meyer Gill did make the final squad there, as did his brother. Where am I here? I don't have him on my list here, but I'm going to add him to the list. We had Brian Gill, the brother, one of the three brothers there, as a likely candidate, and he did make the squad. I was thinking as we were doing the part one for El Salvador that, just for adventure, or just because it's interesting, they might put all the three Gill brothers together. So initially I had one of them as just a possible candidate, but then I thought they may bring him, and it seems that they did. I can't remember which one was the possible candidate, but there we have it. We had a possible but unlikely candidate in Harold Osorio, but he did make the squad, so that's one of the surprises in an otherwise fairly predictable squad for El Salvador. And we finish here with forwards, and there's the other Gill brother, Christian Gill, and he was a likely candidate for us, and he made the squad. So that'll be very interesting if all three brothers are on the field at the same time. I can't wait. I feel like I'm being neglectful by not saying which one we thought was possible. So I'm gonna tell you. Christian Gill has 12 caps, whereas Meyer Gill has 2 caps and Brian has 1. So it was probably Brian. He started the last of their remaining games in May, whereas Meyer Gill showed up for the national team in November of 2022. So anyway, the thinking proved right that they brought the Gill brothers. Who wouldn't really? Now, the brothers may come at the expense of some other candidates, because none of our possible candidates made it to the Cup. The closest was Joaquin Rivas, who made the preliminary squad, but Nelson Bonilla and Juan Carlos Orgueta did not make even the preliminary squad. And that goes all the way down. Possible but unlikely candidate, Stephen Vasquez, not making the preliminary squad. And sadly, nor is David Rugamas, who I was hoping to see, but we had him as seemingly off the squad, having not played for El Salvador since the Gold Cup in 2021. Okay, we move on to a couple of summaries of the information that we've given you then. And we begin with notable non-selections. So I made it clear above that we were surprised that Alexander Larin and Darwin Serene, two of their biggest players, not even making the preliminary squad. We had them both as likely candidates. And the other one was Enrico Hernandez. And Enrico Hernandez was a likely candidate too, and was at least chosen for the preliminary squad, but we were surprised that he did not make the Cup. On the other hand, we have some surprise inclusions. So goalkeeper Oscar Plitas, we considered possible but unlikely. Also defensive midfielder Melvin Cartagena, same possible but unlikely in our opinion. And well, I put Brian Gill here as a bit of a surprise inclusion, because really he was a possible candidate, but not really a surprise. The other one is Harold Osorio, the attacking midfielder, who we considered possible but unlikely. So that is that. New players. There really were no new players that weren't on our list. So all 23 players that were selected were on our list somewhere, usually in the potable or above category. And there's just one player who we thought was off the squad, so we didn't include him on our list, and that is Santos Ortiz. He actually played his last game for El Salvador in 2019, so we thought he was not a consideration, but he did show up on the preliminary squad there, so maybe still in and around the national team. Otherwise, there were about 10 players on that 49-man squad that were not on our radar at all, so we didn't introduce them in part one, and in fact they were new to us, probably playing a single game or something like that. Some of them maybe not even called up to the bench for El Salvador, but named to the squad. We won't go through all of those names, but we'll wait until they get a few games for El Salvador before we introduce them. Okay, and then updates on injuries. Well, El Salvador fans will be happy to hear that there are no injuries unless Alexander Larin or Darwin Serene turn out to have been injured, but I didn't find anything about it. It's still a bit of a mystery why they weren't selected. So that is it for El Salvador.